My son boldly declared, "You'll never match up to my father-in-law." His statement hit me like a dagger. The ideal father-in-law against a humble dad who'd quietly held the family together for decades. I rose to my feet and responded, "Is he going to cover your expenses? Because I'm done wiring you cash." My son's wife looked stunned. "What cash? We haven't gotten a dime from you." What I discovered next left me reeling. Before we go on, please hit subscribe on the channel and drop a comment with the current time and your location. The fork shook in my grasp as Daniel's chuckles echoed through the dining area. Rain pounded on the panes, yet the tempest outdoors seemed mild next to the turmoil at my table. "Edward always has the perfect solution," Cora remarked, slicing her chicken with exact strokes. "When that delivery holdup occurred last month, he fixed it with a couple of calls." I observed my son bobbing his head eagerly, his gaze shining with respect for his father-in-law. The old clock in the corridor chimed steadily, counting moments I'd lost forever. "That's the gap between true entrepreneurial insight and—" Daniel waved loosely around my dining space, absorbing the handcrafted wooden pieces I'd made myself, the family pictures gazing from their spots. His implication lingered like haze. "And what?" The reply escaped harsher than planned. Cora looked back and forth between us, picking up on the tension. "Arnold, the meal is excellent. Thanks for preparing it." But Daniel was already diving deeper into his point. "Edward grasps the overall view. He doesn't get bogged down in minor details. He stabbed a chunk of potato, like this warehouse growth he's organizing. That's how you truly make a difference." My teeth clenched. The green beans I'd meticulously prepared now tasted like dust. I devoted 3 hours to this dinner, yearning for a single night of family harmony. "Your dad puts in real effort too," Cora murmured gently, but her voice held that same subtle rejection I'd noticed for months. "Of course, but construction—" Daniel dismissed it with a shrug. "Edward's constructing a dynasty, genuine inheritance material." The napkin twisted in my fist. 37 years of erecting houses, forging something enduring, something meaningful. Evidently, that paled against shuffling crates in storage facilities. "Edward gave me the area supervisor role," Daniel went on, his posture swelling with second-hand arrogance. "Claims I possess innate command skills." Innate command? I nearly chuckled. If Edward only understood where Daniel's skills had taken him. "That's fantastic, sweetheart," Cora smiled at her spouse. "Your dad always recognizes ability. Always recognizes. Always perceives. Always resolves. Edward Wilson, the flawless father-in-law who never erred." I placed my fork down deliberately, worried I might break it. "He's even mentioning preparing me for a partnership down the line," Daniel persisted. "Says he requires someone he can rely on fully." "Rely on fully?" The sarcasm scorched my throat. "Must be great having a person who trusts you that deeply," I muttered softly. Daniel overlooked the bite in my tone completely. "That's Edward for you. He's a born guide. Some folks have that gift. Others lack it." The clock's ticks grew more pronounced. Rain tapped on the glass. Deep in the home, the furnace kicked on, attempting to heat what had turned frigid. "He's showing me strategic approaches," Daniel added. "Future-oriented strategies, authentic corporate wisdom." "Authentic corporate," I echoed. "You get what I'm saying, Dad. Edward functions on another plane. He dreams larger," Cora agreed vigorously. "Recall when he overhauled that entire Northwest branch? Genius, genius Edward."
Flawless Edward.
Edward who could fix any issue, foresee all, erect empires while I supposedly tinkered with bricks. "Certain individuals simply possess that leadership mentality," Daniel stated, reclining in his seat as if rehearsing for executive meetings. "The skill to handle difficult choices, to truly direct, unlike some—" "Unlike some," I interjected. "Well," Daniel shrugged, his intent obvious. The quiet pulled taut like a string. Even Cora appeared to realize she'd stepped into risky ground. But Daniel, buoyed by his father-in-law's accolades and his own inflated ego, wouldn't drop it. "Admit it, Dad," he said, his tone rising, more assured. "You'll never measure up to my father-in-law." The phrase struck like a solid punch. I rose gradually, my chair grating on the wooden planks I'd laid myself. Every fiber in me stiffened. Daniel lounged there, victorious and clueless, while Cora's expression drained of color and dismay. The rain persisted. The clock continued its rhythm, and something within me turned profoundly icy. I remained there, clutching the chair's top as Daniel's declaration reverberated in my thoughts. You'll never measure up. The word stirred something profound, dragging me into recollections I'd attempted to suppress 2 years prior. Daniel positioned opposite my desk in the study at home. His fingers interlocked firmly, gaze dodging mine. "Dad, we only need to bridge this month." His tone had been subdued then, sheepish. There was this unforeseen cost with the place, and my salary was postponed. I'd issued the check for $2,000 without pause. My boy required assistance. That's what dads do. "This is short term," he'd vowed, tucking the check neatly. "Just till I stabilize." 3 months on, he returned. This round it involved vehicle fixes and bills. $3,000. His tales grew more detailed, his justifications more urgent. "Cora doesn't realize how strained we are," he'd murmured that occasion. "I don't want to stress her. Man to man, you get it?" I got it. I grasped that my son was floundering and too arrogant to show his wife. So I accessed my checkbook once more. By the 4th occasion, it had turned habitual. Daniel would phone ahead, gauging the mood. "Hey, Dad, can we chat this week?" Then he'd arrive with another dilemma. Another crisis that cash alone could mend. I began maintaining detailed logs, not from distrust but as the sums escalated. $2,500 one month, $3,200 the following. I aimed to monitor it all, perhaps aid him spot the trend, deduce where the funds truly vanished. The digital banking simplified it. No further checks, no paper evidence he could carelessly leave for Cora to spot. Merely discrete shifts from my company account to his private one, monthly, reliably. "Edward's assisting with job matters," Daniel had clarified in one of our recent talks. "But we need liquidity support until the new spot starts." Edward handled job matters. I managed the rest. $75,000 across 3 years. I knew the precise figure because I tallied it last week, seated in that identical study examining the bank records strewn over my desk. $75,000 from my toil, my effort, my prudent reserves. Funds I'd gained lugging materials and blending mortar and laboring 14-hour shifts to create something permanent. All of it vanished into whatever void Daniel termed his brief hurdles. The final shift was merely 3 weeks back, $2,800, due to rising rent and some glitch with his coverage. Another crisis. Another assurance this was the end. "I truly value this, Dad," he'd stated via phone. "I know it's not required. But family supports family, yeah? Family supports family." I blinked, snapping back to now. Daniel remained seated, still radiant from his father-in-law's endorsement, still utterly ignorant that his ideal existence was on the verge of collapse. Cora eyed me with worry. "Arnold, you okay?" The downpour outside grew noisier, more persistent. The soft glow from the dining chandelier now seemed glaring to my vision. Everything appeared altered, crisper, as if I viewed it anew. 25 transactions, $75,000, 3 years as the unseen financier, while Edward reaped praise as the benevolent advisor. My hold on the chair intensified. All those months of meticulous budgeting, trimming my own costs to aid my son. All those instances I'd skipped personal wants because Daniel's needs outweighed my ease. And this was the gratitude, this belittlement, this offhand harshness. I gazed at Daniel's countenance, still aglow with vicarious conceit, and sensed a core change within me. The pain lingered, but beneath it lay something firmer, chillier. You'll never measure up. We'd discover the truth. I stood tall gradually, allowing the burden of 3 years to embed in my frame. The rain battered the windows, insistent. Daniel rested there, content with his brief oration, while Cora observed me with increasing unease. "You believe Edward will handle things for you?" My tone emerged even, restrained, whisperingly lethal. Daniel blinked, a bit of his conceit wavering. "What do you mean by that?" Straightforward query. I circled the table, my steps measured on the planks. "When Edward ceases to benefit you, when the position fails as expected, who's covering your costs?" "Dad, what's this about?" "Because I'm halting the money transfers." The statement struck like a mallet. Daniel's complexion paled, flushed, paled once more. Cora's utensil rattled on her dish. "What money?" Cora's tone broke with bewilderment. "We haven't seen a cent from you." The ensuing hush was exquisite. Daniel's lips parted and shut like a stranded fish. The old clock ticked more audibly, noting each instant of his distress. "Daniel." Cora pivoted to her spouse, her forehead creased. "What's he referring to?" Daniel's palms quivered now. It's not like you imagine." "What's not like I imagine?" Cora's pitch climbed sharply. Arnold just mentioned he's been providing us funds. What funds, Daniel? I folded my arms and paused. This was delectable. 3 years of meticulous deceptions were unraveling in moments. There could have been minor short-term aids, Daniel stuttered. How much? Cora insisted. Daniel glanced at me in desperation, wordlessly imploring me to drop it to salvage his remaining pride. The identical expression he'd worn as a kid when he damaged something and wished I wouldn't inform his mom. $75,000, I stated evenly. Cora's inhale resounded in the space. 75 what? Over 3 years, regular deposits, occasionally extra for unique crises. I maintained a casual tone, as if chatting about the forecast. Vehicle maintenance, rent hikes, power charges, health costs, always an issue. Daniel? Cora's voice dropped to a lethal hush. Is this accurate? Daniel's features collapsed. Cora, I can clarify. $75,000. She rose gradually, her chair scraping the floor. While I've been anxious about our money, taking additional work and scrimping on all. It wasn't meant to reach that sum, Daniel murmured. Where did it vanish? The query escaped us both at once. Cora and I fixed on Daniel, awaiting a response we both abruptly craved. Daniel's lips moved without noise. Perspiration dotted his brow despite the chilly night breeze. He scanned the room as if hunting for a way out, but escape was impossible. Daniel. Cora's tone was frost. Where did the money go? Outside, a bolt of lightning flared, bathing the dining area in harsh white for an instant. In that burst, I perceived it all plainly. My son's dread, my daughter-in-law's sense of betrayal, and my own icy contentment. The ensuing thunder rattled the structure. Daniel parted his lips to talk, and I inclined closer, keen to catch his next fabrication. But beyond that, I was keen to witness the disintegration, for this was merely the start. I can clarify. Daniel's voice splintered like an adolescent's. Cora bent forward, her fingers blanching on the table's rim. Then clarify. Where did $75,000 disappear? The quiet extended until even the old clock appeared to falter. Daniel's lips moved repeatedly before sound came. It's complex. No. Cora's words sliced the atmosphere. It's straightforward. You accepted money from your dad. Where did it go? Daniel's hands shook as he grabbed his water tumbler. The cubes rattled against the edges like tiny skeletons. There were some ventures that failed. What ventures? I kept my tone steady, inquisitive. Digital trading sites. Cora's features blanched. Trading? Since when are you an expert in trading? Daniel's polished exterior started fracturing. Perspiration gleamed on his brow despite the cool draft from the windows. I was attempting to create something for us for our tomorrow. What sort of trading? Cora urged. Various kinds, equities, derivatives. His words diminished with each syllable. Daniel. Cora rose slowly, looming over him despite her smaller stature. Face me and speak the truth. Daniel at last met her stare, and something shattered within him. It wasn't trading. The confession dangled like a poisonous mist. Then what was it? Card games? Virtual betting halls? The admissions poured out hastily. I figured I could recover it fast. Multiply it, perhaps triple it, provide you with all you merit. Cora recoiled as if slapped. Gambling? You've wagered our future? It wasn't meant as gambling. I had a method. $75,000. Cora's pitch neared frenzy. How long has this continued? 2 years. Perhaps 3. Perhaps 3. Cora chuckled, void of mirth. You can't even recall how long you've deceived me. Daniel attempted to rise, but his knees buckled. Cora, hear me out. I'm finished hearing. She snatched her bag from the sideboard where she'd placed it. I'm finished with everything. Where to? Away from you. She faced me, eyes reddened yet tearless. Arnold, I'm so sorry. I was clueless. I nodded. I know you were. Daniel finally stood, teetering a bit. Dad, if you could just... No! The term emerged sterner than aimed. Sort your issues, Daniel, but not under my roof. You're evicting me. You evicted yourself when you picked betting over kin. Daniel's expressions flickered like a faulty signal. Despair. Fury, remorse, back to despair. I can quit. I will quit. Then do so elsewhere. Cora was already at the entrance, her jacket partially donned. Daniel lurched after her, uttering feeble entreaties. Cora, hold on. We can resolve this. She didn't glance back. Resolve what, Daniel? The deceptions, the habit, the reality that you've pilfered from your dad for 3 years. I wasn't pilfering. What else to call it? Daniel lacked a retort. I trailed them to the entry, observing my son's world shatter live. The chill breeze surged in as Cora opened the door, bearing the aroma of downpour and damp soil. I'll ring you tomorrow, Daniel pleaded frantically. We'll sort it. Cora strode to their vehicle without a backward look. Daniel lingered in my threshold briefly, scanning my face for any hint of leniency. Dad. Good night, Daniel. I shut the door and heard their engine ignite, then fade into the darkness. The home felt altered immediately, more silent, more somber, yet somehow purer. The supper plates lingered on the table, the meal thoroughly chilled. I eyed the clutter and figured it could hold till dawn. Some matters required time to resolve. 2 hours on, I perched on my rear porch with a tumbler of scotch and a stack of financial records. The downpour had ceased, rendering the atmosphere fresh and sharp. Stars glimmered through the dispersing clouds like strewn gems. I attempted slumber, but my thoughts looped back to Daniel's revelation. $75,000. 3 years of steadfast aid all flushed into his dependency's abyss. The financial logs narrated the tale in stark figures. January 2022, $2,000. March 2022, $2,500. By the end of that year, the monthly transfers had become routine. My accountant had probably wondered about the pattern, but had been too polite to ask. I sipped the whiskey and felt it burn away some of the evening's bitterness. The deck chair creaked under my weight, a sound I'd grown to love over the years. I'd built this deck myself just like I'd built most of the house. 1995. Daniel was 5 years old then, more interested in playing with wood shavings than actual construction. He'd followed me around with his plastic hammer, helping by banging on scraps of lumber. When I'm big, I'll build houses too, Daddy. That memory felt like it belonged to someone else's life. He spread the statements across the small table, using my phone's flashlight to read the details. Each transfer was labeled the same way. Family support, such innocent words for what had become an enablement system. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to human failure. Somewhere in the distance, a train whistle echoed through the valley. Seattle's lights twinkled like a sprawling circuit board, all those lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to understand. Daniel was probably home by now, facing Cora's anger and his own shame. Part of me wanted to call him to find some way to fix this mess, but that impulse was exactly what had created the problem in the first place. I'd taught him that money solved everything, that Dad would always be there to clean up his mistakes. Every transfer had reinforced that lesson, making him weaker instead of stronger. The whiskey glass was empty. I considered refilling it, but decided I needed clarity more than comfort. What would happen if I kept sending money? Daniel would gamble it away, probably faster each time. His addiction would grow stronger, not weaker, and eventually he'd lose everything anyway, including his marriage. But what if I stopped? The question hung in the cold air like my breath. If I cut off the money, Daniel would have to face real consequences for the first time in years. He'd have to choose between his addiction and his life. That choice might save him or it might destroy him. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Daniel's contact. One call, one offer of help, and this could all be smoothed over for a while. Instead, I put the phone away and looked up at the stars again. My father had built houses too, back in the day when construction meant something different. He'd worked with his hands until they were permanently stained with sawdust and paint. When I was Daniel's age, he'd pulled me aside one day and said something I'd never forgotten. Son, the only thing you really own is what you earn yourself. Everything else is just borrowed time. I'd built this house for Daniel, dreamed of passing it down, watching his children play in the same backyard where he'd grown up. But maybe that dream was selfish. Maybe what Daniel needed wasn't inheritance, but incentive. The cold was seeping through my jacket now, reminding me that even March in Seattle demanded respect. I gathered the bank statements and stood slowly, my knees protesting the movement. Inside, the house felt warm and welcoming. I locked the back door and turned off the deck light and then made my way to the kitchen. My address book sat in the drawer where it had lived for 20 years. I flipped through the pages until I found what I was looking for. Mary Lawson, attorney at law. Tomorrow I would make some calls. Tonight I would try to sleep. But first I would make a decision that might change everything. The next morning brought sunshine through my kitchen windows, painting everything in cheerful yellow light. I sat at the table with coffee and the newspaper, trying to pretend this was just another ordinary day. The phone rang at 10:30 right as I was reading about the city council's latest budget proposals. Daniel's name appeared on the caller ID. I considered letting it ring, but curiosity won. "Hello, Daniel." "Dad." His voice sounded rough, like he'd been awake all night. "About last night, I know things got heated. Heated is one word for it. I wanted to apologize for the things I said, the comparison to Edward." A pause. That wasn't fair. I sipped my coffee and waited. Daniel had always been good at apologies. They came easy to him, smooth as silk. I also wanted to explain about the money situation. "It's not what you think." "What do I think?" Well, he seemed to lose momentum. "I mean, it sounds worse than it is. $75,000 in gambling losses. How does that sound better? It's not all gone." His voice picked up speed, desperate now. "Some of it I can get back. There are these techniques, strategies, Daniel. No, listen. I've been studying the systems, the odds. If I could just get a stake together, maybe 5,000 to start." "No." The word hit him like a physical blow. I could hear his breathing change on the other end of the line. "Dad, please. I can make this right. The only way to make this right is to stop gambling. I've stopped. Last night was a wake-up call, but I need to get back what I lost for Cora's sake." I closed my eyes. The same circular logic that had trapped him for 3 years. "Where's Cora now, at work?" She's pretty upset." "I imagine she is. That's why I need to fix this quickly before she does something drastic." Something in his tone made me sit up straighter. "What kind of something?" "She mentioned lawyers. Divorce lawyers." The word hung between us like a blade. "Maybe that's not the worst idea." "Dad," his voice cracked. "You can't mean that." "I mean that she deserves better than being married to an active gambler." "But I'm not active anymore." "I told you. Then get professional help." "What kind of professional help?" "Addiction counseling, Gamblers Anonymous, residential treatment if necessary." "I don't need, that's the only help I'm offering, Daniel." "Treatment, not money." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if he'd hung up. "Edward won't help either," he said finally. "You asked Edward for money." Yesterday before the dinner, his voice was small now, ashamed. He turned me down flat. Said I needed to figure this out myself. Smartman. "So you're both against me." "We're both against your gambling." "It's the same thing." "No, Daniel, it's not." I could hear him breathing heavily, working himself up to something. "Fine, if that's how you want to play it. This isn't a game, isn't it?" His voice turned ugly, bitter. Rich old man teaching Hisson a lesson, making him beg. "Daniel, you'll regret this. Both of you will regret this." The line went dead. I sat there for a long moment listening to the dial tone. Then I set the phone down carefully and reached for my address book. Mary Lawson answered on the second ring. "Mary, it's Arnold Riley. I need to discuss some changes to my will." 3 days passed before I could bring myself to make the appointment. I spent those days researching inheritance law online, reading about conditional wills and family disputes. The deeper I dug, the more convinced I became that legal action was my only remaining option. Mary Lawson's office occupied the 15th floor of a glass tower downtown, with panoramic views of Elliott Bay stretching toward the Olympic Mountains. I'd known Mary for over 15 years, ever since she'd helped me incorporate the construction business. Her mahogany desk bore the comfortable clutter of a successful practice. Law books, client files, and a coffee service that spoke of long-standing relationships. "Arnold." She stood as her assistant showed me in, extending a firm handshake. "It's been too long, though I have to say your call sounded urgent." "It is urgent." I settled into the leather chair across from her desk. "I need to change my will." Mary's eyebrows rose slightly. "May I ask why?" "The last version we drafted seemed comprehensive." "My son has a gambling addiction." The words hung in the air between us. Mary's expression shifted from professional curiosity to genuine concern. "I'm sorry to hear that. How serious?" "Serious enough that he's gambled away $75,000 of my money over the past 3 years." Mary reached for a legal pad, her movements measured and deliberate. "Money you gave him directly? Monthly support payments?"
"He claimed he needed help with expenses."
I looked out the window at the city below. "Turns out he was feeding an online casino habit. Have you confronted him about this last week?" "He admitted everything, then called me 3 days later demanding more money to fix the situation." Mary wrote notes in precise handwriting. "What kind of changes are you considering?" "I want to make his inheritance conditional on getting clean." "That's possible. Washington state allows performance-based inheritance terms, provided they're specific and measurable." Relief flooded through me. I'd hoped for this answer, but hearing it from Mary made it real. What would you recommend? Mary leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the legal pad. Completion of a certified addiction treatment program would be the most defensible requirement. Inpatient rehabilitation followed by a period of verified abstinence. How long for gambling addiction? I'd recommend a minimum 6-month treatment program, followed by 1 year of documented sobriety. And if he refuses, then you designate an alternative beneficiary. Many clients choose charitable organizations related to the addiction issue. I thought about Daniel's threats on the phone, his ugly tone when I'd refuse to enable his gambling. There's a Gamblers Anonymous Foundation here in Seattle. Perfect. That creates a clear incentive structure. He gets help and inherits, or the money goes to help other addicts. Mary's assistant knocked and entered with fresh coffee. We paused while she served us, the interruption giving me time to process the implications. What about my daughter-in-law? She's innocent in all this. We can include a separate provision for her, a fixed amount regardless of your son's compliance, $50,000. Mary made another note. That's very generous. She's a good woman. She doesn't deserve to suffer for his choices. This is clearly a difficult decision, Mary said gently. Are you certain this is what you want? Family estrangements can become permanent. I thought about Daniel's voice on the phone, the entitlement and anger when I'd offered help instead of money. I've been enabling him for 3 years. It has toe stop. Then we'll draft something ironclad. I'll need details about the specific treatment requirements, verification procedures, and timeline considerations. How long will this take? 2 days for the initial draft. We can schedule the signing for this week if you'd like. I nodded, feeling the weight of decisions settle into certainty. Do it. Mary walked me to the elevator, her expression thoughtful. Arnold, you're doing this out of love, not anger. Remember that when things get difficult. The elevator doors closed on her words, but they followed me all the way home. 2 days later, I returned to Mary's office for the formal signing. The conference room felt different from her personal office, more sterile, more final. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the legal documents spread across the mahogany table like evidence in a trial. Mary had assembled everything with her usual precision. Linda Chen, the notary public, sat quietly at one end of the table with her official stamp and record book. 2 witnesses, Mary's assistant and a building security officer, waited nearby. Before we begin, Mary said, I want to review the key provisions one more time. She lifted the document, her voice taking on the formal cadence of legal reading. The inheritance is contingent upon Daniel Riley's completion of a certified gambling addiction treatment program. Minimum duration 6 months followed by 1 year of verified abstinence from all forms of gambling. Yes, the words sounded harsh in the sterile room, but I felt only relief. If these conditions are not met within 5 years of your death, Mary continued, the estate will transfer to the Seattle Gamblers Anonymous Foundation and Cora's provision. Cora Wilson Riley will receive $50,000, regardless of Daniel's compliance or non-compliance with the rehabilitation requirements. Linda looked up from her paperwork. Mr. Riley, do you understand the contents of this document? I do. Are you signing this of your own free will without coercion or undue influence? I am. The formality felt appropriate. This wasn't a casual family decision. It was a legal restructuring of my life's work. Mary handed me the pen. Any final questions? I stared at the signature line, thinking about the house I'd built with my own hands, the business I'd grown from nothing. All of it hanging now on Daniel's willingness to get help. What if he tries to contest this? The conditions are specific and legally sound. His addiction is documented through the money transfers you provided. Any contest would require him to admit his gambling problem, which actually strengthens your position. I signed my name with steady strokes. The pen felt heavier than it should have, weighted with 3 generations of family history. Linda applied her official seal with a satisfying thump. The witnesses signed in turn, their signatures making the whole thing real and irreversible. 1 copy for your records, Mary said, sliding a folder across the table. 1 for our files and 1 for the safe deposit box. I held the folder in my hands, feeling the weight of paper that could reshape Daniel's life. How will the verification work? The treatment center will provide completion certificates. For the sobriety period, we'll require monthly documentation from an approved counselor or testing facility. And if he never gets clean, Mary's expression softened slightly, then you'll have the satisfaction of knowing your money went to help other families, Avoid what you've been through. The building security officer left first, then Linda with her notary supplies. Mary's assistant cleared the conference table efficiently, leaving just the two of us in the bright room. "Are you at peace with this decision?" Mary asked. I looked out at the Seattle skyline, imagining Daniel somewhere in those buildings, probably unaware that his future had just changed forever. "I'm at peace with trying to save him, and if he's too far gone, then I'm at peace with that too." Mary walked me to the elevator again, her hand briefly touching my shoulder. "Good luck, Arnold, with everything." The elevator descended through 15 floors of other people's problems, other people's families, other people's attempts to control the future through legal documents. When I reached the parking garage, I sat in my truck for several minutes holding the folder containing Daniel's new reality. Tomorrow I would call him. Tonight I would plan exactly what to say. The drive home through Seattle traffic gave me plenty of time to think. 3 days passed before I felt ready to make the call. I spent the time carefully planning my approach, shopping for ingredients, and preparing the house for what would likely be our final family dinner. The grocery store felt different that morning, like I was shopping for a last meal. I chose simple ingredients: a roasted chicken, fresh vegetables, good bread, nothing that would require complicated preparation or distract from the conversation ahead. At the checkout, Mrs. Patterson from the deli counter asked about Daniel. "Haven't seen your boy lately. How's he doing?" "He's learning some important lessons," I said. She smiled and nodded, unaware she was probably the last person who would ask about Daniel with genuine affection. Back home, I moved through my kitchen with mechanical precision. The meal prep gave my hands something to do while my mind rehearsed the phone call ahead. By Tutsang, everything was ready, except the conversation that would change everything. I dialed Daniel's number before I could reconsider. "Dad." His voice carried surprise and weariness in equal measure. "Hello, Daniel. If this is about lecturing Megan about gambling, it's not." I kept my tone neutral, almost friendly. "I've been thinking about our conversation, about your money situation." Silence stretched across the line. I could almost hear him recalibrating, searching for the trap. "What about it?" "Come to dinner tonight. We'll talk." "Talk about what exactly?" "Your future. Cora's future." I paused deliberately. "Your money problems. Are you saying you'll help us after all?" "Perfect." The desperation in his voice confirmed everything I'd suspected about his financial state. "I'm saying we should discuss it face to face like family." "Dad, we really need 7 Sao, bring Ka. She's still pretty upset about everything. Then maybe it's time to fix things." Another pause. I could hear him breathing, probably calculating how much he could ask for, how to play this conversation. "Okay, we'll be there." "Good. See you at 7. I hung up before he could ask more questions. The afternoon passed slowly. I set the dining room table with care, using the good china and silverware reserved for special occasions. This qualified as special, though not in any way I'd ever imagined. At 6:30, I retrieved the will from my study and placed it in an envelope on the side table. Everything was ready. The meal, the setting, the legal documents that would reshape Daniel's world. Looking around the dining room, I remembered other family dinners from happier times. Daniel as a boy excited about school projects. Teenage Daniel bringing girlfriends home to meet his father. Young adult Daniel announcing his engagement to Cora. All of it led to this moment. The grandfather clock chimed 7 times. Right on schedule, I heard a car in the driveway. Time to find out if love could still triumph over addiction. The doorbell rang at exactly 7:00, just as I expected. Through the peephole, I saw Daniel and Ka standing on my porch, both looking uncertain but hopeful. Daniel held a small bouquet of flowers while Cora clutched a bottle of wine. I opened the door with a warm smile. "Right on time, Dad." Daniel stepped forward awkwardly, offering the flowers. "Thanks for inviting us back." Of course, I accepted the bouquet graciously. Come in. Cora followed, extending the wine bottle. I wasn't sure if we should bring anything, but that's very thoughtful. I gestured toward the dining room. "Dinner's almost ready." The atmosphere felt entirely different from our last gathering. Warmer lighting from the chandelier cast everything in a golden glow, and I'd opened the windows to let in the spring evening air. The table wassaid with my good china, the same pieces my wife had chosen decades ago. "Something smells incredible," Cora said, settling into her chair. "Just roasted chicken and vegetables, nothing fancy." I poured wine for all of us, noting how Daniel's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his glass. Remember when you tried to help me build the back deck? I asked Daniel as I served the meal. Daniel laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. I was 5. That hammer was bigger than me. You were so determined to help, Ismailit at the memory. Every nail you tried to hammer bent sideways. But you never got frustrated, Daniel said quietly. You just kept straightening them out and letting me try again. Cora watched our exchange with visible relief. You've always been there for us, Arnold. I want you to know we appreciate it. Family is everything, I said, cutting my chicken with deliberate care. We work through problems together. Daniel shifted in his seat. About those problems, Dad. I know things have been difficult lately. I held up a hand gently. Tonight is about family. We can discuss business later. The rest of the meal passed pleasantly. I shared stories about building the house when Daniel was young, how he'd supervised from his sandbox while I laid the foundation. Cora talked about her work, carefully avoiding any mention of financial stress. Daniel seemed more relaxed than I'd seen him in months, occasionally reaching for Cora's hand. Remember the tool shed incident? I asked as we finished the main course. Daniel groaned. The one I helped you build that collapsed the next day. Your mother took pictures of you standing proudly next to that crooked disaster. I refilled our wine glasses. She said it was the most beautiful shed she'd ever seen. I felt so proud, Daniel admitted. Even after it fell down, you helped me understand what went wrong. You never made me feel stupid, because you weren't stupid. You were learning. The grandfather clock chimed 8 times, its deep tones filling the comfortable silence that followed. I could see Daniel relaxing more with each passing minute, his confidence building as he interpreted my warmth as forgiveness. Why don't we move to the living room? I suggested, standing to clear the dishes. I'll bring coffee. Let me help, Cora offered, but I waved her away. You're a guest tonight? Go make yourselves comfortable. As they headed toward the living room, I began clearing the table, stacking plates with methodical precision. Through the doorway, I could hear their quiet conversation. Daniel's voice animated Ash told Cora about some childhood memory I'd triggered. I loaded the dishwasher efficiently, my movements automatic after years of practice. The kitchen felt peaceful, filled with the lingering aromas of dinner and the sound of family in the next room. When I joined them in the living room, Daniel and Ka were sitting close together on the sofa, her hand resting on his knee. They looked hopeful, united, ready to rebuild their relationship with me. Coffee will be ready in a few minutes, I said, settling into my chair across from them. Dad? Daniel began, leaning forward slightly. I know you mentioned discussing our situation. I nodded thoughtfully. Yes, I've been giving it considerable thought. The anticipation in Daniel's eyes was unmistakable. He'd interpreted the evening's warmth as proof that I'd changed my mind about helping them. Financially, actually, I said, standing again, let me get something from my study. Something I think will interest you both. I returned from my study carrying a manila envelope thick with legal documents. The weight of it felt substantial in my hands as I settled back into my chair, placing the envelope deliberately on the coffee table between us. Daniel's eyes fixed on it immediately. What's that? This, I said, my voice taking on a more serious tone, is the result of my thinking about our money discussion. Cora straightened, sensing the shift in atmosphere. The comfortable warmth of dinner was evaporating, replaced by something more formal, more final. Daniel, you mentioned wanting to discuss money. Let's do that. I opened the envelope and withdrew the will, its legal weight making the papers feel heavier than they should. I had my attorney prepare some documents that address your financial situation. Daniel reached for the papers eagerly, his face bright with anticipation. Dad, I knew you'd understand. His expression changed as he began reading. The color drained from his face slowly, like water running out of a sink. His voice cracked. This can't be serious. Cora leaned over to read alongside him, her brow furrowing as she processed the legal language. What does it say? She asked softly. Daniel's hand shook as he continued reading. He's changed his will. I can only inherit if I complete gambling addiction treatment. 6 months minimum in a certified residential program. I confirmed calmly, followed by 1 year of verified abstinence from all forms of gambling. Dad, you can't do this. Daniel's voice rose sharply. I can and I have. I kept my tone level, controlled. The documents are already filed with the court. Kay continued reading over Daniel's shoulder, her expression shifting from shock to understanding. Monthly check-ins with approved counselors, she read aloud. Medical documentation required. 5-year deadline from date of death. And if I don't meet the conditions, Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Then the estate goes to the Seattle Gamblers Anonymous Foundation. I lean back in my chair. Your inheritance will help other families avoid what we've been through. This is punishment. Daniel stood abruptly, the papers scattering to the floor. You're cutting me off completely. No, I said firmly. I'm giving you the chance to earn what you inherit. Cora picked up the fallen documents, studying them carefully. When she looked up, her eyes were bright with understanding. This is exactly right, Daniel, she said quietly. Daniel spun to face her. What? Your father is right. You need help, real help. Not more money to gamble away. Cora, you can't be serious. I am completely serious. She stood, moving closer to my chair. Arnold, this is incredibly brave. Daniel stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. You're siding with him. I'm siding with your recovery. She turned back to the will. It says here I'll receive $50,000 regardless of whether you meet the conditions. That's right, I confirmed. You shouldn't suffer for his choices, so even if I never get clean, Cora gets money. But I don't. Daniel's voice was rising toward hysteria. That's exactly right. This is insane. I'm your son, and that's why I'm doing this. I stood as well, facing him directly. Because I want you to become the man I raised you to be. Not the man addiction has made you. Daniel grabbed the will from Cora's hands, scanning it desperately as if looking for loopholes. There has to be another way. There is, get help. I don't need yes, you do. Cora's voice was steel. You've been lying to me for 3 years, gambling away our future. Your father is offering you a path back. Daniel looked between us, seeing his world collapse in real time. So that's it? Follow your rules or lose everything? Follow the rules of recovery, I corrected. This isn't about control, Daniel. It's about love. He laughed bitterly. Love? You call disinheriting your son love? I call giving you a reason to get clean love. Daniel stared at the document in his hands for a long moment, then dropped it back onto the coffee table. I need time to process this. Take all the time you need, I said. The conditions don't change. He headed toward the front door, Cora following after gathering her purse. Thank you, she said quietly, touching my arm as she passed. I nodded, watching them leave through the window. Daniel's shoulders were hunched with defeat, but for the first time in years, I felt something approaching hope. 4 months after that night, I sat at the same dining room table, but everything had changed. Daniel sat across from me, but this Daniel was different, cleaner somehow, more present. The desperate edge that had defined him for years was gone, replaced by something I barely dared to call peace. The program director says, I'm making excellent progress, he said, cutting his chicken with steady hands. 3 months down, 3 to go. Cora smiled beside him, her relief evident in every gesture. He calls every other day now. Not for money, just to talk. How are the group sessions? I asked. Hard, Daniel admitted. Really hard. But I'm starting to understand how the addiction works, how it rewired my thinking. We'd been having dinners like this twice a month since Daniel entered the Pine Ridge Treatment Center in May. Family therapy sessions had been painful but necessary, forcing us to confront years of enabling and manipulation. I understand now why you had to do it, Dad. Daniel continued, I was destroying everything. My marriage, my relationship with you, my future. I never stopped believing you could change. I said I just needed to stop making it easy not to. The counselors explained, enabling to us. Cora added, how giving him money was actually feeding the addiction. Daniel nodded. Every time you helped, it reinforced my belief that gambling was okay because there would always be a safety net. And now I'm learning to build my own safety net. Real skills, real relationships, real responsibility. I looked at my son, really looked at him. His eyes were clear, focused. The furtive, calculating expression that had become his default was gone. The financial counselor helped me create a repayment plan. Daniel said, it'll take years, but I want to pay back every dollar I took from you. Daniel, no, Dad, I need to do this. Not for the inheritance, but for me, for my marriage, for our family. Cora reached for his hand. It's been hard, but we're both learning what a real partnership looks like. No more secrets, no more lies. I have 6 months left in the program, Daniel said, and I want to complete it even if I inherit nothing. This isn't about money anymore. The inheritance was never the point, I replied. Getting my son back was Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He didn't try to hide. I was so angry when you showed me that will. I felt betrayed, abandoned. And now I understand it was the most loving thing you could have done. If you'd just given me more money, I'd probably be dead by now. The grandfather clock chimed 8 times just as it had that night 4 months ago. But instead of marking the end of our family, it now measured our healing. The counselor says recovery is lifelong, Daniel said. Even after I complete the program, I'll need ongoing support. You'll have it, I promised, from both of us, Cora added. We finished dinner in comfortable conversation about small things. Daniel's new job prospects, Cora's promotion, my latest construction project. Normal family talk that felt miraculous after years of crisis and lies. As they prepared to leave, Daniel hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for not giving up on yourself. I watched through the window as they drove away, Cora's hand resting on Daniel's shoulder as he drove. They were rebuilding their marriage just as Daniel was rebuilding himself, slowly, carefully. With professional help and genuine commitment, the will still sat in my safe, its conditions unchanged, but I no longer thought of it as a weapon or a trap. It was simply what it had always been intended to be. A parent's love expressed through boundaries instead of enabling. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Thanks for dinner, Dad. See you next week for therapy. I smiled, turned off the lights, and headed upstairs. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine hope for my son's future. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.